All right, so this is a PIA over our Butte Creek fire that we had on the 9th. So I think we got most of the folks that were there. I don't have everybody, but at least the initial responders besides Stacy. But you were, who was with Stacy?
I was with
you were
Stacy,
Stacy. Okay,
yeah.
so you can kind of give the story on that aspect. So, anyways, fire came in at 1411. First arriving unit was BC 31 for this incident. So Blaine, let's get your thoughts on what happened when you initially arrived.
Okay, so initially arrived, the homeowners were standing outside in the driveway. I could see a little bit of smoke coming out from the skirting of the house. Drove around to get a three-sided view, and I could see flames coming out of the Delta side. Wasn't for sure if it was inside the structure or if it was on the outside of the structure. There was flames around the big window area right there. So then at that point, talked to the homeowners, did a 360, the best I could. There's a bunch of berry briars and stuff on that Delta side. You can get all the way around. It was the same all the way around. There was just light smoke. It was dark in color, but it wasn't pushing at all. It was just wafty smoke coming out of the skirting. So engine 31 was first engine on scene. Their initial assignment was to do the fire attack. And then engine 34 was reserve engine 34 was right behind them. So I decided them to back up. They made entry into the fire, or into the house. Lieutenant Maynard said that there was hoarder-like conditions. And they couldn't see much in there or move around much, and requested for second line for manpower. So I did that. They initially cut a hole in the Charlie side first, or was it Delta side first?
Charlie.
Cut a hole in the Charlie side first through the floor to see if they could see any heat or fire down below. I think you guys squirted a little bit of water in there as well.
Yeah.
In that hole, and then it popped out on the Delta side at that time, or Bravo side. Which side did it pop out of, Mike?
It didn't really never popped out fire-wise. It was just smoke.
Just smoke.
Yeah,
More
and it was
smoke.
kind of just, yeah, as
Locked
we gave
it
it some
in.
more air, it kind of puffed a little more. We never ever did see flames until it came through the floor.
Over the house.
Mhm.
So then then they went to the Delta side, cut a hole. Still same story, still couldn't locate the actual fire. And then we went to the exterior. I think Mike sent one of the firefighters to the man crawler access space in the hole, and they were met with the steel frames of the trailer, so it could gain access there. We tried breaking open the skirting, and the same thing, met with the steel frame of the trailers. After a 70-minute time check, we pulled everybody out. And then at the 80-minute time check, we declared it a defensive fire. So at that point, we hadn't really flown a lot of water. I had tender 33 on scene up at the top. I'll back up a little bit. Engine 31 did ask if we should lay a tail up the driveway. I told them no, that we'll get a tender up there. Prior to that, and that's what we had done. We just hooked in with the Y up top. So moving forward again, went to the defensive mode, had tender 33 there, tender 63, and pumper tender 31 on scene. And we started flowing a lot more water and ran out of water. Sent the tenders down the hill to get more, tender 33 to get more water from the other two staged. We set the porta tank thinking that we could probably supply enough water at that point. That did not pan out. At that point, we grabbed the 4.5 and just dragged it straight down the hill towards the tenders at the bottom of the cul-de-sac. They had a power line right away, and I think we hooked onto John's vehicle to pull it down, which worked out really well. Once we were able to get the fire knocked down from the inside, then the overhaul started, and it was a long process of trying to get that knocked out. So multiple crews. I think Stacy said that she went through 7 bottles on that fire.
All right, we'll bounce around. So Nick, you were the next in engine then? First in engine?
First in engine, yeah.
All right. So your arrival was 1425. Tell us what your thoughts, you guys were talking about on your way up there.
So initially when Blaine got on scene, we heard the size up. We staged at the bottom of the driveway until he gave his size up, and then we were trying to see if we needed to drop a tail. I didn't know how far up it was, and Stacy didn't measure or hadn't had time to. And so we radioed to him, and then finally she was just like, just drop a tail. So Lamar got out. He was with us as our third. He pulled the tail off, and then Blaine was like, don't drop that tail. So I had to jump out, and I grabbed it and pushed it back in the hose bed. So we were a little delayed at the bottom of the driveway. We ended up coming up the drive, and with Blaine's size up, with the fire in the Delta side, Delta window, we thought this could potentially just be a room of contents fire. So we were just gonna pull up there and grab a hand line, and it was Stacy's assignment was grab a hand line, a cross lay and stretch it to the Delta side by the screen door there, and see if we could make access and get that. Engine 34 was right behind us. When we were pulling up the drive, as I was pulling up, I could see him in my mirror. So they literally followed up pretty much behind us. So Mike was able to tie in with Stacy on that fire attack, and they pretty much worked together from the beginning, I believe, with that. So I was thinking a water supply. I didn't, like Blaine said, he told us not to drop a tail. I knew we had the tender coming, and then I knew I had Corey's engine, which was Reserve 34 Super B. And so I'm like, well, we might be able to get it with this, but I wasn't 100% for sure. And then we just kind of kept adapting. Once it opened up, I was like, I was flowing 500 GPM, and I couldn't sustain. I had 6 minutes of flow essentially with what I had, and we just kept running out, and that's when we had to reevaluate. But those were kind of the initial talks in the engine. Was possible room and contents fire is kind of what we were thinking, and then pulling a hand line fire attack.
So Mike, you're the next one in.
So we got there, and Blaine met me and said, be backup. So I had Hayden grab us secondary line for backup. I met Stacy at the porch. She said, I can't get in the front door. That's just full of crap. So we kind of did a 360 ourselves and could see that obviously Blaine had said something about it looked like it was under the house. So obviously it was under the house. So lazy gray, no pressure. So figured, it's in the insulation. It's, somewhere under the house, we've got to find access. So I tried going in the front door, fell flat on my face. You couldn't literally, I fell flat on my face. I couldn't go anywhere. And so I said, well, this isn't going to work. So I backed out. I said, well, let's see if we can cut a hole. So we cut a hole in the Charlie side bedroom wall to gain access to the space. It was just still covered in stuff. So we cleared out enough of a space. Her and Lamar cut a hole in the floor, and instantly it was just, the thing was chock full of insulation, duct work. Like we bound the saw up because we got it in the duct work, wrap the wire around the chain, and just not a good access point. They ran low out of air. They left. I went in, tried to see if I could get in there. It just wasn't a good access point for us, and there was some smoke production, but not a lot from the hole. So I didn't think that we were really in the right spot.
Oh, I'm gonna pause you real quick. Can you draw on there your Alpha Bravo or Charlie sides?
Oh, yeah.
The hole that you guys initially covered, was that at?
It was in the Charlie side. So there was like
that hole on the ground. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a big bay window there. So we just went to the side of the bay window. I cut the wall out, and
well, how did you make access to that point where we're from? Was that you went in through
just outside
Delta, or just
from the Charlie side outside of the structure? I just made a hole in the wall so we could gain access.
Gotcha.
Because of the hoarder conditions, one of those bay windows had an air conditioner in it and stuff. So I just went in and lopped a hole in this because it looked like the way the smoke was coming out that it might have been like in that space. So that's why I cut the hole in there. And so that didn't work. So we pulled out. I tried to go in and tick the floor. Just couldn't find the floor. I thought, well, if we could find the spot, then we can cut a hole, but there was just so much. And by then we pulled out, we went to the Delta side to the slider, because that's where Blaine said he thought he'd seen flames. Yeah. So we tried looking under the porch to see if we could see anything, but it was so much junk and everything. So we opened the slider, pulled a bunch of stuff out onto the deck, and they cut another hole. And while they were cutting that hole, I went in and tried to tick stuff, and like I said, I just couldn't find the floor. And I was literally had stuff up to my armpits walking around inside of the house. So I went around and checked the rooms to try to see if I could find any kind of fire, and I couldn't find anything. And so I pulled back out. About that time, Stacy and them ran out of air, and then Brownsville came in, and I met with Joe and I said, hey, we're trying to find this thing. If you could get somebody in the hole and maybe try to find it with the tick, so we kind of have an idea of what we're doing. They got in the hole, couldn't really find it. They had a little bit of heat signature a little farther in the trailer, which turned out to be where the fire was at. But the way that thing was constructed, and I think the fire was encapsulated in that under part of the house, you just couldn't, the beams wouldn't allow you to tick it. And unless you were down underneath of them and you know, poking up through, you would never find it really the way it was creeping in there. And they tried for quite a while. And by that time we were the 70 minutes in or whatever, and Blaine just decided that was enough. And I completely agree that at that point, that thing had been skunking around in there for way too long, and somebody could fall in there and end up with a piece of furniture on top of them, you'd never find them. So at that point, it just went to exterior, and we tried, you know, everything from the outside with the piercing nozzle. I think we were running with the frame of the trailer. We'd get a little bit of smoke production or a little bit of white smoke, but it was because it was between the porch, which we found out at the end, between the porch and the front girder. So you were getting a little bit, but it wasn't enough to get the main body, which was in the center bay of the thing. We just
Essentially, there was what,
there was three bays,
three beams that you.
yeah, and three beams, and not to mention the lateral beams that supported the trailer. So everything we tried, it was still compartmentalized with not being able to gain. I mean, we'd had to literally pull everything out of the
It was
house.
like a grid under there. I mean, it was
Cause
ridiculous.
I sent Mitchell in, I tried to send Mitchell in the crawl space, and he's like, there's a beam, I can't go anywhere. So that was fruitless. And then when we tried, we broke the blocks out and got in there. It was, you know, we ran right into the beam again. So everything we tried to get an angle on, we just really couldn't get an angle on it. So, and we tried squirting from the Charlie side there, but we hit one of the lateral walls, the support walls, so we couldn't get water to flow through. So it was just, yeah, it was everything we tried just did not work. That was pretty much after that, then we went defensive and did all the other stuff, so.
Now I wasn't up there when, so. Let's see, who else was? I have Ken here.
Foster was
safety.
Yeah, because when I showed up, it was about like what you're saying. It was that lobby smoke that was just moving out.
And it increased it increased in volume, but not intensity. Like there was more of it, but it just never, like it never really got pressurized until we cut that hole on the Delta side. And about the time that we decided, hey, that's enough, you could start. And I told Blaine on the radio, I said, hey, we're getting a little bit more pressurized smoke and starting to get some air. I mean, we left it open enough that it started punching up holes, and eventually it was going to burn through somewhere and get air. And that's exactly what it did. So
Now you called for a second alarm at 14:32. What were you thinking there? What were you wanting in that first alarm?
More crews, more, yeah, tenders and crews.
Did you call and request any tenders specifically, or?
No, I just asked for a second alarm. In my head, I was thinking I was gonna get 2 engines and a tender. And I guess Sweet Home sent over a pumper tender, which would have been.
Which actually ended up working great.
Yeah. So, I knew that we need more people, and then we're also potentially gonna need more water.
I was the one that suggested the second alarm, and that was my intent, is I knew we were gonna need more people, just because we didn't have, I mean, after we ran into the quarter conditions.
Yeah.
At that point, we were already quite a ways into it, and we didn't have that many people, so I knew we were gonna be in for a long haul, you know.
Which was, I mean, that was really a good can report, because he said, border-like conditions, we're trying to make access, we need more, need second alarm assignment, so, which was perfect.
John, you were there, anything?
Didn't really get to see that much. I never walked up into the trailer. I think when I initially pulled up, I just pulled up to kind of see what, if anything, they needed. Dropped off some water. And you know, they were still having a hard time just locating it. I talked to Blaine over type stuff. kind of juggled some resources. The second alarm assignment wasn't a full assignment. From Tangent could supply anything, but Brownsville actually said, hey, we could send a engine and a tender, and it was like, oh, perfect, we don't get that every day.
And Brownsville worked their butt off. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as everybody else did too, but it was nice to have those guys there.
So I went back and forth up the hill a couple different times, just running people up and, running gear up. I ran Brownsville's crew up. But I never really did get to see anything there at the trailer. It never really looked like it was doing anything all the time I was up there. You know, I see a little smoke around it.
Now, Connor, you transported. Tell us about that.
DC Soon called us up to the structure. The homeowners were sitting in the truck. One of them was on home oxygen, so he needed extra oxygen. So we were able to walk the homeowners down and take them in Chief Casey's car, drive them down to the medic unit, and then we transported them for further evaluation for smoke inhalation.
Power sats, everything medically okay. Yeah.
Pretty normal.
All right.
And I'd had a history, and you had too. I knew that address as soon as I seen it. And I knew we were gonna have problems with access, and they haven't done any, if nothing else, the road got worse because they logged it. And I told, that's the first thing I told Corey, I'm like, be very careful, don't get off to the right, please don't get off to the right, I don't want to get this in stuck.
Yeah, kudos to the who engineered on that, because that is not a nice driveway of that thing.
I came around that hairpin curve and I was just like, well, I'm gonna hug the right and just hope I don't drop my rear end. in
I
this
won't
other
lie, I
ditch.
was holding on really tight because I knew what happened.
And it was full send, like it wasn't, like I knew if I backed off, I probably wasn't gonna make it, so.
There you go. Mike, you got?
Oh,
I think we're pretty much,
Yeah, I'm gonna go over some, you guys are fine, though, this is more for. So just for some educational pieces on this for manufactured homes, for those of you who haven't had this before. Yeah, share your screen with this. So with manufactured homes. Let me get through these real quick. This is how they're constructed. And so this is what we were running into. And so you can see on this, the actual frame on the bottom, which is that steel frame. So line 3 of these up next to each other, and you've got what you were dealing with. All right. It's lined like this and like this. And so in between, you have these big steel frames that are running the full distance of that. And then underneath, you've got all of your insulation and everything else. And on top of that, you have these floor joists. And so that fire was creeping in between those floor joists, which was making this fire incredibly difficult to access. And underneath one of those, this is what it looks like. And so you can see from the exterior that those stones that line the outside of that thing, all they literally are doing is just sitting there. There's no structural component to those. Those are just to protect the inside of that, protect the vapor barriers and everything else associated with the inside of these trailers. So those you can easily knock away, which we did on at least 2 of the sides. But what we were running into is these cinder blocks that were right up against in a couple of spots. And then trying to deflect water in, you're hitting not only these steel structures, but then also the floor joists that are running the length of this thing. And that wouldn't be so bad if that you could access the top, but to speak to Mike's point, this is what the inside of this place looked like. And this is after a lot of stuff was yarded out of there. They just had totes and totes of stuff loaded on the inside of this thing. This is just inside the sliding glass window on the Delta side of the structure. And so you can see there's, just mounds of stuff on the inside, which makes it very difficult to access the floor. And so how do you get to that? And so this is about the time Blaine called for a defensive operation, is when we started getting pretty heavy smoke development on the exterior. But on the one side, you can see where we knew where this was coming from is you can see the smoke moving underneath. This is just volume push smoke, right? But that fire was burning underneath this thing and all throughout the bottom of this. And you can see how the smoke's different here than in other spots, but look at the difference.
That's on the.
It's a Bravo.
Is that the
It's on the Bravo side, yeah. But look at the pressurized smoke on the bottom there as you're watching this, and you can see this fire is underneath this thing. And I mean, we were really faced with a lot of difficult situations in this. It's not only that, but then of course the axis that went along with it. So,
Well, it got better. It seemed like after they hit that crawl space and they put a bunch of water in under the crawl space. And then it looked like it got better for a little bit. Like the smoke production kind of went down. And then, at least from my standpoint, and then when they opened that delta, when they opened that floor in the delta and we started flowing that water, it just kept getting worse.
It developed,
from
yeah.
there. It just developed.
and then ultimately is when we lost water supply and
Yeah.
I don't know, Blaine, lessons learned on this.
What? You know, we could have had before we went defensive, ensured that we had our water supply set up prior to maybe reevaluate, just taking the supply line down the hill where the tenders were at. I would have done that differently. Maybe been a little bit more aggressive initially with the piercing nozzle, since we're limited in space, just getting in there and just poking holes and seeing if we could make a better attempt to get some water underneath that. And getting more people up there to rotate through, because like I said, there's some people that went through 7 bottles right there, and that's really putting a lot of strain on the numbers. I guess hindsight, I could ask for another alarm for more people.
Yeah, I guess at that point it probably would have been Albany would have been the only ones coming our. I think we had everybody else. Tangent
Yeah.
couldn't send anybody.
Well, Albany was standing by
And they
the
were standing
station.
by the
yeah.
station, and they were calling
Station
their people
covered.
back because they had calls going on too, so.
Well, and Corvallis had to cover Albany because Albany was covering us.
Mhm.
So,
So
yeah,
everybody was back then.
I don't know, what are your thoughts? Your thoughts as far as could them better?
No, I don't really have a lot that water supply could have been established quicker, sooner.
Yeah,
Maybe doing the lay. I mean, but you would have had to have a very specific plan
Yeah.
to make that work going up that driveway, because that's a long lay.
yeah,
So that first engine would have had to lay about midway. The other engine would have had to reverse lay back down to the lot.
Well, we
Well, and then we,
done a face to face. I was like, because really water tender 33 was the only one that was making it up the hill. And, even if we had 10 of those, it would have gotten congested, it still would have been slow.
yeah.
And
'cause there's
you
one at
were
a time.
pumping, when we needed water, it was a lot of water.
Yeah.
And
And that
so-
was, I called because we had put that porta tank down, and I heard pumper tender 21, which I got a hold of Randy to find out which tender that truly was, if it was our 4-wheel drive one or not. Because I knew that one could have made it up and hit the hill. So while 33 was filling, we could have had the porta tank running, and that might have worked out, but I don't know that would still have been enough water, because now we have 2.
Yeah, we ran out on the bottom, or nearly ran out a couple times, just due to the amount of water you were looking. So this ended up being just over 40,000 gallons of water.
I was gonna say, I thought my rough ball was about 50.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you guys were flowing, how many
I was
lines?
flowing 3 Metro 2s, or Metro 1, sorry.
3 Metro ones?
Yeah, so I was 500.
500 in a minute.
And,
So we
and I
could've
mean,
put
now
it-
I wasn't probably flowing all 3 at the same time. I would say, but sometimes I could definitely tell when I was.
Yeah,
And there was times, I mean, I was blowing through it. I mean, that's all I had out though was 3 hand lines with Metro 1s.
yeah.
And even that piercing nozzle is 150 BPM as well, so.
So, and even just throwing the blitz fire in there, I mean, that would have been one blitz fire or.
Well, I thought about that when we went defensive, and for people, I almost thought about just taking that blitz fire and just putting it on that exposure. on that Alpha Delta corner.
Yeah,
But I mean, I
I don't know
didn't,
that we could have sustained that for much.
but that was the thing. I didn't know, I didn't. have
No,
that
until we had an
water and-
established water supply,
Yeah.
Yeah,
because we did have the tenders in the system to be able to do that.
we had the tenders, we just weren't set up. Well, and to be fair, initially, when I got there, I thought, oh, we'll have this small room of conference fire that will. And then as conditions progress, I should be a little more forward thinking on that, but.
So I guess I had a question because I was thinking to myself, because like, as we're sitting here. 40-minute time check, 50-minute time check, I'm like, we're gonna burn this thing to the ground, like, we're not gonna catch this fire is too developed at this point. So I was thinking water supply at that point, but I didn't want to just start jacking hose before I got the approval from you.
Yeah,
To figure out where we were gonna go. Would you like me to just make that decision or?
yeah, I mean, not make, or at least run it by whoever the VC is the day, that's,
Yeah.
Get you thinking that way too, because we could have taken it right down.
Yeah.
Down that hill, and I don't know that, having it hooked up to John's rig, that was, it'd take one person then, versus the whole crew, which was.
Yeah, which we had enough people there to make that happen. It was
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gonna happen one way or the other.
Yeah, it just looked nice to use that, which was a good thing to
Yeah,
see.
and then even taking it down the hill, they just hooked onto
Yeah.
your rig, right? Pulled it.
John pulled it.
John pulled
Yeah,
it
John.
back and forth to, when you picked it up.
Yeah.
So. Which, thanks to John for dinner and
yeah,
getting us the stuff we needed, because I know he did a lot of running around. And to the brother, he was helping us out with the trailer and four-wheeler, running up bottles and stuff.
Yep.
So, because initially I knew, Steve was down there with the rescue, so I just had him, he wasn't doing anything, had him be water supply. But there really wasn't much water supply at that time to manage, so.
who was 61 was pumping me, were they
Mhm.
supplying me with Joe?
It bounced back and forth. So we had them supplying you with water tender 61. And then we had, at one point in time, we had pumper tender 21, just flowing up the hill. And then once they ran out, then we transitioned over to the other, we had a Siamese on there.
Okay,
And so they just ran their pressure up, they took over, and then when they split, water tender 23 came up, they hooked in,
Okay.
they supplied. Then pumper tender 31 got back, and we just transitioned back.
so
and
you
forth.
just nurse tendered then, you
Mhm.
didn't actually, okay.
So the tenders were able to, for the most part, except for 61's able to push up the hill then.
Oh, yeah, and they all were.
Oh, good.
We never used, actually, 61 was the only one we never plumbed directly into, we pumped them through,
Okay,
21,
that's good to know, because we had 800 feet out.
900.
900.
We had 800 out, the 900, that last 100, the 900 feet was it was dirty, we washed it, but it was sitting at the back of the hose bed.
Also was 800.
There's probably
It was 800 feet.
60 feet of elevation, 50, 60 feet.
I was figuring 50, is kind of what I figured.
Our pump operators were pumping at 150 and get it up the hill. deep.
My initial calculation on that would have been 140, 145 for me. So you were right where I would have pumped it.
I know you said you were getting good water up there.
Yeah, I was right at 50 to 70, 50, sometimes it dropped down a little bit, but yeah, it was my static pressure.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Okay. Through 4-inch. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm glad we did the 4 instead of the 3. I mean, I knew if we were flowing that much water, it's probably better to jack that 4-inch down, and we have more of it, obviously. Make it.
Yeah, and then I think Bob and Bert also then kept in that turn. And then as things started to die down, that's when we kicked the other, our mutual aid partners loose,
Yeah.
and it was just pumper tender 31 and 33 for supplying.
I was actually amazed at how fast, once we went defensive and did run out of water, how fast it actually went through the whole house. It went through pretty quickly.
Well, it was the order conditions.
Yeah,
So was that fire in the middle, the point of origin was in the middle of the house? Right where you drew that?
It's completely burnt through.
that's where it was completely, the whole.
And then it burnt the whole ceiling out of that too the metal roof was still there, but.
Yeah, because Mike was underneath there and the linoleum on the entryway was clean on top and the particle board underneath was completely charred out.
So you can see there, that's in through the Bravo side. And so it had burnt out the floor in there. And that's where they were trying to dig for hot spots, is right in there.
That was the hardest part, to try to get those hot spots out, was just getting through around those beams.
Let's see, other things that happened while it was drill night. So essentially anybody who could come down and help came down and helped. And so we had John came and trucked a bunch of people in, and then some people jumped in on the rigs and came up and helped out at the end. So at least we had that towards the end and made cleanup a little bit faster. But on that, we were there from 14:11 to 21:37 is when engineering went home. So it was a long fire.
There was a long fire. Big shout to the Wheelies here. They really did a good job for not having a whole lot of experience in the fire service.
Hear that, Kira?
You guys did a great job. Your help was appreciated.
Thank you. I'm sitting here and I was like, oh, hey, that's coming on here soon, and just hopped on.
So,
Yeah, tell Marissa good job too.
Yep. That's Paul.
I will. We're both studying for finals right now, so I'm present but not present.
Thanks. But that's really all I got. Anything else to add from anybody else?
I think maybe one thing that, just looking back to do it over, and that would be to actually set up the porta tanks at the bottom of the hill. We had the engine there, you know, that we could have set up and drafted with.
Yeah.
And maybe, maybe might have worked out a little bit better, but
Yeah, we would have already had it all clogged up down there when we pulled that. But
Well, initially, when we were that first 70 minutes of it, we weren't flowing a bunch of water. And so, I thought, well, we could handle that with just Bob coming up, bumping his load, going back down, and then that quickly changed, so.
So if we were to have this fire again today on the house
I'm going
further up,
stick.
no, I guess for water supply, would you wanna just go halfway up and drop our tail? Is that?
At that same house
thinking?
today,
Yeah,
I'd probably do the right of way again, because we have that situation. It was nice to have that roadway, the access open to get shuffle people and gear and bottles and all that stuff. If we had that right of way right down the side there, which is actually a shorter distance than it would have been going up the road. And we proved that we're able to pump it with a tender. And I'd go that route again.
yeah, we would not have been able to make that with one engine for sure. That would have been a full 2-load.
If taking the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then that hairpin corner, it would have drug across there.
Drug or-
And then our whole axis been blocked and kinked on stumps and everything else. So.
you would have. to
And then
have
getting
somebody-
personnel hoof up that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're wiped out by the time they make it up the hill. So yeah, that was a tough situation.
So I wasn't on it. Was there like a windy road and there was like a shortcut you could have taken to the?
Yeah,
Well, it was just a right of way, so it was just grass and dirt. So they'd put power lines to the left of the driveway, and the driveway kind of went up, and then a hairpin corner going around and then up. And, I mean, it was a steep incline.
if it would have been real rainy, that might not have been, this is, that's a whole, but
So you
Yeah.
can see that tree line on the upper portion of that. That's the right of way, and that's just a nice.
This is actually backwards, because this is the house right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the address is actually 30331.
Yeah, just gonna change it. But yeah,
There's
we just went right here with that hose lay, right to that, but if otherwise we'd gone.
That's probably another, what, 400 feet, probably,
Yeah.
500 feet.
And you wouldn't have had your road access, I guess.
and it's, you know,
It's
500 feet of elevation.
coming down there, you can't see where the road's at. I probably could the engines, but coming down with the pickup, I couldn't see. It was on the prayer, it's on the rock still, so.
Coming down was worse than going up, I'll tell you that.
All right. I will end this for everybody. Thanks for tuning in for a minute.